3 or 4 kids, or there was about 6 kids in their family, but 3 or 4 of us used to go and they had a big dairy herd, and we used to go and get the cattle. If they were on the flats, the dogs used to bring the cows in, but sometimes they could wander several miles up into the ranges with heavy eucalyptus forests, and in the far end of the ranges it used to be thick lantana scrub. I used to go down there quite often. I was there practically all weekends, every weekend. It was very late in the afternoon, about normal milking time for after 5 p.m, probably getting closer towards 6 p.m. in the evening.
Take me through what happened that day.
The cows didn't come home, the dogs didn't get them, so we had to go looking for them, and there was 2 mates. One fellow was named Bevan, and one was named Errol, and they had also several dogs, and we set sail. We could hear, we knew, well, the cows weren't anywhere to be seen, they weren't on the flats, so we knew they must have been up in the ranges. So we set sail, walked up into the ranges. The cows were basically at the very end of the Johnson's paddock, right up against where the eucalyptus forest bordered into the heavy lantana scrubs. We were almost at the cattle. We could see a couple, we could hear the bells dongling. Then all of a sudden the cattle started to race towards us and race past us. The whole lot got going. They were scared as blazes because you could tell the way they were running, and their tails were just straight out behind them. Then the dogs started running after the cattle, left us behind, and then we didn't see anything until quite late. Everything else had gone, and then we saw, well, I suspect it must have been a yowie. It couldn't have been anything else. It was making grunting noises, and we could smell the stink. We didn't hesitate. We got going also.
Did you see this thing come out of the bush, or where was it?
I didn't actually see it come out of the bush itself. It must have done because we were right close to the lantana scrub. I didn't notice it until it was out in the open running towards us, and then that's when we took off.
It was actually running towards you?
It was running directly at us, yes.
About how far away was it from where you were standing?
In terms nowadays, probably about 30 metres when I saw it.
You didn't actually see it come out of the bush, what, you were looking somewhere else?
I was actually wondering what the blazes was going on, why the cattle and the dogs were all racing off. And when I eventually spotted it, it was running towards us, and it was probably about 30 metres away.
In terms of height, how high was this thing?
It would have been easily as high as me. It wasn't real tall.
Did it have a shape like a human shape?
No, definitely a human shape because it was upright.
You mentioned it was hairy, was that correct?
Yes.
What sort of colour hair was it?
Black.
It was running like a human. Was its arms sort of pumping like a runner would run, or was its hands by its side?
That's getting hard to... It had a funny sort of a gait, and it was definitely upright.
Oddly moving forward and back, or from side to side?
It wasn't running like a human, how they put one foot in front of the other. It was covering the ground very fast, but it wasn't actually running like a human being. It was moving quite fast, and it was enough to scare the blazes out of us. We didn't hang around at all.
Did you get a sense of a head or arms or legs?
Yes, I could see arms and legs, but quite thickly covered with fur or hair.
Was the hair long or was it short? Was it short and fairly tidy like a bear, or was it wild and sort of a bit longer?
Around the shoulder area, the hair was really long from head down.
The head area, was it distinct, or was it low set or high set? Did it have a big head?
It had quite a big head, but it was very low set.
Sunken into the shoulders?
No distinct neck at all.
Did you get any sense of a face?
Yes, but very blurry. You couldn't actually define the face.
Might have been hidden by hair?
Hidden by hair, yes. But it had a smell. We got the smell. Something that I'd never smelled before.
Unpleasant?
Yes, quite unpleasant. Quite musty.
What was the noise like?
Type of annoyed grunting.
A deep grunting or high pitched?
No, a deep grunting. I guess it would possibly sound a little bit like a wild pig grunting, but it definitely wasn't a wild pig because it was upright.
And it was moving pretty quick?
It was moving very quickly. I never looked back. I don't know what the other boys did, but I just never looked back. The hair stuck up on the top of my head and I was off. I guess what panicked us more than anything else was the way the cattle and the dogs went. They just lickety-split. They were off.
I'm trying to think, would you be able to estimate the weight of this thing?
Quite heavy, larger than a filing cabinet, and it had quite bulky proportions.
You mean it was a solid-looking animal?
Very, very solid.
It wasn't lean, it was quite beefy-looking.
Yes, it was.
Could you see muscles?
No, not for the hair. Basically, there was that much hair hanging down it that all of those features that you'd normally be able to see were really not distinguishable.
The noise it was making was pretty loud?
No, it wasn't really loud, but it was quite distinctive. Quite loud, but it was a low grunting sort of a noise. We ran about 2 miles right down the foot of the range, then along the flats. We didn't stop till we got back to the main road. You know, something we'd never encountered, something unusual and something strange. Otherwise, cattle, my dogs wouldn't have gone like that.
The dogs actually really took off before this thing turned up?
Yes, they were scared, tail between their legs. They were scared witless. They just took off in a hell of a rush.
Actually, in terms of the smell, do you remember that you saw the thing first and then had the smell, or you had the smell first before you saw the thing?
I could smell it first, actually. I was sniffing around before everything started to play up, before everything started to run off. I could smell a strange smell.
This is before the dog or the cattle took off?
Yeah, I could sense something was funny smell somewhere along the line, and I don't know what it was, but it just all come together with a rush.
You actually walked up the far end of the paddock towards where all the bush was?
Yes.
And this thing was further along the bush line from you and came out of the bush, I guess?
The